My son was in the ICU after an accident when my mother called me and said, "Tomorrow is your sister's birthday party. Make sure you help prepare." I said, "I can't. This isn't the time." She replied, "If you don't come, I'll cut you off." I hung up and deleted her number. On the day of the party, my son woke up and said, "Mom, I got hurt because Grandma..." My name is Jessica. I'm a 36-year-old single mum living in a small town in Ohio, and if you asked me a year ago what the worst day of my life was, I would have told you it was the day my ex-husband walked out on me and our son. But then came the day I got the call from the hospital. It was a Thursday afternoon. I remember because I had just finished folding the last load of laundry and sat down for the first time that day. The phone rang, and the moment I heard the nurse's voice, I knew something was wrong. She said my son Tyler had been in a bicycle accident on his way home from school. A car ran a red light and hit him hard. They had to rush him to the ICU, and he was unconscious. I dropped the phone, grabbed my keys, and drove like my life depended on it. When I got to the hospital, they were already prepping him for emergency surgery. His face was pale, covered in bruises. He looked so small under all those tubes and wires. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I kept thinking, please let him wake up. Please let me take his place. I sat by his side, holding his hand, whispering prayers I hadn't said in years. Every beep from the monitor made me flinch. Every doctor walking by made my stomach drop. Then my phone buzzed. It was my mum. For a split second, I thought she was calling to check on Tyler. Maybe she'd come to the hospital. Maybe she'd ask how her only grandson was doing. I answered in a whisper, "Mum?" And she said, "Did you pick up the cake for Amanda's birthday yet?" I blinked. "What?" She repeated it slowly, like I hadn't heard her the first time. "The cake. For Amanda's birthday. It's in 2 days. You were supposed to get it today." I told her Tyler was in the ICU, that he might not make it through the night. I was crying. My hands were still stained with blood from holding his arm before surgery. I thought she'd say something comforting. Anything. But all she said was, "Well, Amanda's turning 30. That only happens once. Family shows up when it matters." I couldn't breathe. I looked at my son still unconscious, then at the phone in my hand. I realized right then that some people care more about parties than people, and sometimes those people are the ones who raised you. That was the moment everything shifted. Not just because of Tyler's accident, but because I saw my mum for who she really was. And I knew I had to choose. I could keep trying to be the daughter she wanted, or I could be the mother my son needed. I made my choice. And that's when the real story began. Growing up, I thought all mums were like mine, sharp-tongued, polished, and always dressed like she had somewhere more important to be. She had this way of turning compliments into lessons, and lessons into warnings. She'd say, "Smile with your teeth. No one likes a shy girl," or "Don't eat that much if you want to fit in your dress." I didn't think of it as cruelty then. I thought that was love. My little sister Amanda was everything Mum wanted me to be. Blonde, bubbly, pageant cute even before she was old enough for lipstick. She got the new clothes, the loud praise, the front row seats at every recital. I got, "You should have tried harder," or "Look how great Amanda did. Maybe next time you'll get it right." When Amanda forgot her lines in the school play, Mum blamed the script. When I forgot mine, she didn't talk to me for 2 days. It wasn't just about performance. It was how we laughed, how we sat at the dinner table, how we looked in pictures. I used to practice smiling in the mirror before family photos, not to look happy, but to look perfect. That's what she cared about most. Perfection. Not joy, not curiosity, not the little things that make a child feel safe and seen. Just the package. Amanda could scream at her slammed doors and even steal from her purse once. Mum still kissed her forehead at night. I got straight A's, cleaned the kitchen without being asked, and barely got a thank you. I didn't realise it was favouritism. I thought I was the problem. I thought maybe if I were funnier, or prettier, or more like Amanda, she'd love me the same. Looking back, I see how deeply that shaped me. I learned early that love came with conditions, that affection had to be earned and could be revoked without warning. I carried that into every friendship, every relationship, even into motherhood. There were moments I'd hear her voice in my head, when Tyler cried too loud or spilled juice on the carpet. Moments I hated because I sounded just like her. But I also remember how I felt as a little girl, always trying, always almost enough. And that's what kept me from becoming her. Sometimes I wonder if Mum even knew she was doing it. Maybe she thought she was raising strong daughters. Maybe she thought favoritism was just structure. But favoritism doesn't build strength. It breeds silence. It teaches you to hide the messy parts so you won't be less lovable. As a kid, I never saw her as toxic. I saw her as powerful. The sun is in our small universe. We revolved around her, and we were burned by it. It took me decades to name it for what it was, and even now it hurts to admit. But the truth is, her love came with strings, and I spent my whole childhood trying not to tangle in them. When I became a mum, I thought I was ready. I read every parenting book, joined mum groups, and decorated the nursery in soft grey and yellow tones. But nothing could have prepared me for how much of my own childhood would come rushing back. The day Tyler was born, my mum showed up at the hospital with a name list. She didn't like the one I'd chosen. She said it sounded too plain and insisted on something more distinguished, something that would look good on a business card someday. I was exhausted holding my newborn, and instead of hearing congratulations, I was fielding opinions on branding. It didn't stop there. She questioned every bottle I used, the temperature of the bath water, even the lullabies I sang. Once, when Tyler was 2, he had a meltdown at the grocery store. She was visiting and came along. I crouched down to talk to him through it, and she pulled me aside and hissed, "People are staring. Pick him up. He's embarrassing." I felt it then, that tightness in my chest. The shame. Not for Tyler's behaviour, but for mine. For not being the kind of mother she wanted me to be. She called every week with advice I hadn't asked for. Articles about discipline, links to private preschools I couldn't afford. Suggestions that always ended with, "I'm only saying this because I care." I told myself that's what mums do, that her criticism was just a rough way of showing love, but deep down it chipped away at me. I started to second-guess my instincts. Was I too soft, too messy? Was Tyler misbehaving because I wasn't enough? It wasn't one big moment that made me see it. It was hundreds of small ones, like when I posted a picture of Tyler in a dinosaur costume and she commented, "You couldn't find something less cheap-looking," or when I told her I was thinking of switching careers, and she laughed. "You can barely keep up with your kid, and you want more stress." Every word felt like a test. I kept failing. And I realised I'd spent my whole life in that same exam room. Even now, as a grown woman, I am still trying to earn an A from her. But something changed when Tyler looked up at me one night, messy-haired and sleepy, and said, "You're the best mum." He said it like it was obvious, like there was no test at all. That was the moment I started to question everything. Not just her methods, but her definition of love. Maybe being a good mum wasn't about performance. Maybe it was about presence. And maybe love shouldn't feel like pressure. Maybe it should feel like peace. The ICU waiting room was too quiet, the kind of silence that makes your ears ring. I had been there for nearly 6 hours, only stepping out of Tyler's room when the nurses insisted. My son was lying unconscious, his little body bruised and bandaged, and I couldn't do anything but wait. I hadn't eaten. I hadn't even cried yet. I was too numb. Every time a doctor walked past, I braced myself for the worst. I kept checking my phone, hoping for updates, praying for good news. That's when it buzzed. It was my mum. At first I was relieved. Maybe she'd ask how Tyler was. Maybe she'd finally show up, finally be the mother I needed. I answered with a whisper, still afraid of disturbing the stillness. "Hi, Mum." Her voice was cheerful, too cheerful. "Did you pick up the cake for Amanda's party?" I blinked. "What?" She repeated herself. "The cake. From Coldwell's. You said you'd get it on Thursday. Amanda's party is Saturday, remember? I didn't even know how to respond." My voice cracked. "Tyler's in the ICU, Mum. He got hit by a car. I'm at the hospital." There was a pause. But not the kind you get when someone's absorbing shocking news. It was an annoyance, like I had thrown off her schedule. "Oh no," she said finally. "But can't you still swing by the bakery later? Amanda's turning 30. This party is important." I looked around, stunned. My son was fighting for his life, and my mother wanted a cake. "I'm not leaving the hospital," I said. "You always do this," she snapped. You make everything about you. Amanda has one big birthday and you're sabotaging it. I felt the pressure rise in my chest. My son might not make it through the night. I'm not leaving him. I don't care about a party. She didn't back down. She got sharper. Then maybe you should think about what you're risking. We've been putting money aside for Tyler's college, but if you insist on this behavior, don't count on our help. I froze. Are you seriously threatening to take away his college fund because I'm staying with him in the ICU? You're being dramatic, she said. I'm just saying family is about showing up for each other, not just when it's convenient. My throat tightened. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I wasn't asking her to come to the hospital. I wasn't even expecting her to care. But I never thought she'd use Tyler's future as a bargaining chip. I hung up without saying goodbye. My hands were shaking. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there looking at the floor, trying to understand how someone could be so cold. I walked back into Tyler's room. The machines beeped steadily. His chest rose and fell. He was still with me. I sat down and held his hand. I whispered, "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." And I meant it. That night, I turned my phone off. I didn't want another word from her. Not one. I thought about all the times she'd used guilt to control me. The birthdays, the holidays, the favors that were never really favors. They were leveraged. I had always justified it. Told myself she meant well. That she just had a hard time expressing love. But this wasn't hard love. It was manipulation. It was cruelty wrapped in tradition. I stared at Tyler's face still and peaceful despite everything. He needed me. Not as the woman who balanced obligations, but as the mother who stood her ground. That phone call broke something in me. Not just my trust, but my willingness to keep pretending. And once something's broken like that, it doesn't go back to how it was. It changes you, for good. I stayed. No matter what she said, no matter how many messages she sent, I didn't leave that hospital. My son was lying in a hospital bed with tubes in his chest and bruises on his face, and I wasn't going to let him wake up alone. She kept texting me at first, pretending to be concerned. "Any updates?" she wrote. Then right after, "You still have time to make it for the cake drop-off." The tone shifted quickly when I didn't answer. "Jessica, you're making a scene. Amanda is devastated you're ruining her birthday. Do not expect any help from us going forward." I read every message, but I didn't respond. Not because I didn't have something to say, but because nothing I could say would matter. She wasn't listening. She never had. Instead, I focused on Tyler. I watched his chest rise and fall. I wiped his forehead with a damp cloth. I whispered little stories into his ear, just in case he could still hear me. The nurses told me to rest, but I couldn't sleep. I didn't want to miss anything. Every flicker of his eyelids, every small movement of his fingers, made my heart leap. There was a moment around 2 a.m. when I thought I saw him twitch. Just once. I leaned in close and waited, holding my breath, like it might break the silence. But nothing happened. Still I stayed. I thought about everything my mum had said. About duty, about family, about how I was being selfish. But how could choosing my child ever be selfish? The longer I sat there, the clearer it became. I wasn't just choosing to be at the hospital. I was choosing Tyler over the version of me my mother always wanted. I was choosing real love over performance. I thought about all the times I had bent myself in half to keep her happy. Holidays, reunions, and family dinners were where I played the role of obedient daughter. But this was where that ended. I wasn't going to abandon my child for a party. I wasn't going to betray his trust to maintain a lie. I wasn't going to keep being the girl who said yes when everything inside her screamed no. There was a strange kind of peace in that. Not comfort, but certainty. For once, I wasn't split in half. I leaned over and kissed Tyler's forehead. His skin was warm, his breathing was steady. I said, "I'm right here, baby. I'm not going anywhere," and I meant it with every part of me. The sun was just beginning to rise when it happened. The hospital room was still dim, the sky outside soft and grey, and I hadn't moved from my chair all night. My hand was resting on Tyler's, warm and still. I was humming barely loud enough to hear. Some old lullaby I used to sing when he was a baby, back when his biggest worry was which toy to bring to preschool. I must have dozed off for a second, but something stirred and pulled me awake. Tyler's fingers moved. At first I thought I imagined it. My heart jumped, but I didn't want to get ahead of myself. I leaned in closer, holding my breath. Then I saw it again. A twitch. Just the smallest flutter of his hand against mine. I whispered his name, not expecting anything. Tyler. My voice cracked, and then barely audible I heard him say, "Mom!" My body went cold and hot at the same time. I leaned over him so fast I nearly knocked over the IV stand. His eyelids fluttered, and for a second he looked right at me. I couldn't hold back the tears anymore. They fell without sound, soaking into my shirt, my cheeks, my hands as I held his. "I'm here, baby. I'm right here." His lips moved slowly. He tried to say something else, but the effort was too much. Still, that one word, Mum, was everything. It was a lifeline. It was a miracle wrapped in a whisper. I pressed the nurse call button and kept talking to him, trying not to cry too loudly. I wanted my voice to be the first thing he heard, the soft, steady proof that he was not alone. When the nurses came in, I stepped aside, but I didn't let go of his hand. They checked his vitals, nodded and smiled in that quiet, professional way that told me they were hopeful now too. All I could think was he came back. My little boy came back to me. In that moment, every second I spent in that chair, every ignored text from my mother, every tear I hadn't let fall, it was all worth it. This was why I stayed. This was the reward for trusting my heart over her voice. I kissed his forehead, and he didn't pull away. His skin was warm, his breath was real. He was here. I thought about how close I'd come to missing this. If I had left even for an hour, I might not have been there when he woke up, but I stayed. I chose him. And now he had chosen life. That was the only gift I needed. 2 days after Tyler opened his eyes, my mum showed up at the hospital. I hadn't invited her. I hadn't even told her about his progress, but somehow she found out, probably through Amanda. She walked into the room like she had every right to be there, carrying a bright blue balloon and a cake with "Welcome back, Tyler" written in thick frosting. She was wearing heels, makeup fully done, and that same practiced smile I'd seen 1,000 times before. The kind that photographs well, but never feels warm. "Sweetheart," she said too loudly for the quiet room. "Look who came to see you." Tyler blinked at her, confused, still groggy from the medication. He didn't reach for her, didn't smile. He just looked at me like he wasn't sure what was going on. She bustled in, putting the cake on the counter like it was a centerpiece. "I thought we'd take a few pictures for the family group chat. Everyone's been worried sick." She pulled out her phone before I had a chance to say anything. I stepped between her and Tyler's bed. "He's not up for pictures right now." She blinked like she hadn't heard me. "Just a quick one." "Come on, Jessica. You're always so uptight about memories." I repeated slower this time. "He's not ready. And I don't want photos right now." The smile faltered for a second. "Fine," she said, voice tight. "I was just trying to make a moment. This should be a celebration." I watched her rearrange the balloons, smoothing her skirt, pretending to tidy up. It was all for show. She wasn't here for Tyler. She was here to look like the kind of grandmother people admire. One who shows up, bring cake, acts like nothing ever happened. She pulled up a chair beside me uninvited and started talking about Amanda's party. It went beautifully. "You really missed something special. But I told everyone you had a situation." My hands clenched. "A situation? You mean your grandson is in the ICU?" She shrugged. "Don't be dramatic. You know how these things sound to other people. No one wants to hear about tubes and surgeries at a birthday dinner." I turned to look at her, really look at her. She was calm, as if this were just another minor disagreement. Like she hadn't tried to manipulate me 2 days ago. Like she hadn't threatened Tyler's future over a cake. She kept talking something about how Amanda said hi, how proud she was of me for holding up under pressure. I didn't hear most of it. All I heard was the noise of my childhood, the constant pressure to pretend, to smile when it hurt, to be what she needed me to be, even if it meant disappearing. Then she leaned in and said, "You know, we really should update that college fund paperwork, just in case something like this happens again." That was it. That was the last straw. I stood up and looked her square in the eye. My voice didn't shake. "You're not welcome here anymore." She blinked again, slower this time. "Excuse me. You heard me. I don't want you near my son. I don't want you near me. This isn't a performance. This is our life. And you've used up every chance I had left to believe you cared." She scoffed. "Don't be so ungrateful. I've done everything for this family." "No," I said. "You've done everything for yourself. You've worn the mask so long, you think it's your face. But I see through it now." She opened her mouth, but I cut her off. "You didn't show up when he needed you. You showed up when there was something to gain. A photo, a compliment, a narrative. But you don't get to write our story anymore." The room was quiet. Even Tyler, half asleep, seemed to sense the tension. She stood up slowly, grabbing her purse. "You'll regret this," she said, low and firm. I didn't move. "No, I won't." She left without another word. The balloon swayed gently in the air behind her. The cake sat untouched on the counter. I sat back down beside Tyler and took his hand. My heart was pounding, but my chest felt lighter than it had in years. For the first time, I had said it out loud. I had drawn a line not in anger, but in clarity. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. She wasn't the mother I needed, and that was her choice, but I still have to make mine, and I chose peace for both of us. Tyler's recovery was slow but steady. Each day brought a tiny win that felt like a mountain moved. The first time he squeezed my hand on purpose. The first time he whispered water. The first time he sat up on his own. It all felt like magic. Physical therapy started a week after he woke up. It was hard on him. Some days, he'd cry out in pain, frustrated by what his body couldn't do yet, and I had to bite my lip to keep from crying with him. But even in those hard moments, he never gave up. He'd grit his teeth, take a deep breath, and try again. Watching that kind of courage in such a small body changed something in me. At home, our days were quiet, but full. I'd sit with him on the floor while he built towers with his left hand, the one that healed faster. He'd show me each structure like it was a skyscraper, grinning with pride. I started noticing things I'd missed before. The curve of his laugh, the way he tilted his head when he thought hard, the soft snore he made when he fell asleep with a book on his chest. He didn't talk much about the accident. Neither did I. We didn't need to. Every hug said what words couldn't. In those moments, I realized I wasn't just healing from the trauma of almost losing him. I was healing from years of thinking I had to be someone else to be loved. Tyler never asked me to be perfect. He didn't care if the laundry piled up or if dinner was just cereal some nights. All he wanted was me present, real, and trying. That's when I understood something I hadn't before. I used to think strength came from holding everything together, from not showing weakness. But now I saw it in his small hand reaching for mine, in his quiet persistence, in the way he kept choosing joy even when his legs ached and his steps wobbled. He gave me a new kind of strength, not the kind that's loud or proud, the kind that says, "We're still here. We keep going." One night I tucked him into bed and sat beside him longer than usual. He looked up at me and whispered, "You didn't leave." I smiled and kissed his forehead. Never, I said, and I meant it. Not just that I stayed through the worst, but that I was staying as myself, no longer shrinking, no longer trying to fit into someone else's mold. In choosing him, I found myself, and that's a strength no one can take from me. After Tyler got stronger and life began to settle, I felt something inside me shift. It wasn't just relief or recovery. It was a need to speak, to stop hiding, and to share the truth that had lived in silence for too long. I started small. I wrote a short post online about what it felt like to choose my child over a toxic parent. The response was overwhelming. Strangers thanked me. Friends I hadn't spoken to in years reached out to say, "I went through that too." That connection lit a fire in me. I joined a local support group for single mothers, and the first time I walked into that room, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: belonging. No one asked why I didn't talk to my mum. No one judged me for the decisions I had to make. We talked about everything. About bedtime battles, bills we weren't sure how to pay, and memories we still couldn't say out loud. We laughed. We cried. And through it all, I found pieces of myself I hadn't realized were missing. With each meeting, I got stronger. Not because I had all the answers, but because I stopped pretending I had to. I started showing up exactly as I was, and I was met with kindness, not criticism. Tyler saw it too. He saw me come home lighter, happier. He started asking questions about what I did in the group. I told him the truth, that sometimes grown-ups need help too, and that helping each other makes us all stronger. I began mentoring younger mums in the group, not with advice or rules, but just by listening, letting them know they weren't alone, that their pain was real, that their healing was possible. The more I gave, the more whole I felt. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was building something new. A life with boundaries, with honesty, with softness that didn't mean weakness. One afternoon, Tyler and I planted a tree in the backyard. I told him it would grow tall with deep roots and strong branches just like him. He smiled and said, "Like our family." And in that moment, I knew. I wasn't continuing the legacy I came from. I was writing a new one that starts with truth, one that grows from love, not fear. I may not have had the mother I needed, but I became the one my son deserves, and that is the legacy I will leave behind. So now I want to ask you, if you were in my place, would you have chosen your child, or would you have tried to keep the peace with your family, even when it cost you something that mattered more? This isn't an easy question, and I know every family is different, but I hope my story made you think, not just about what we tolerate, but about what we truly value when things fall apart. I'd really love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever had to choose between protecting your own peace and meeting someone else's expectations? If so, what helped you through it? Please share your story in the comments. Someone out there might need to hear that they're not alone. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you for listening, for staying with me until the end. It means more than you know.